Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're checking out Enshrouded on the Steam Deck OLED. I originally checked this game more than a year and a half ago in January of 2024 when it first came out, and it didn't run very well. The world is massive, the visuals are stunning, and the game kind of feels like Valheim meets Elden Ring, somewhere in the middle. The combat is pretty legit, but the question is, can the Steam Deck keep up with it? Let's find out. Now, if you've never heard about it, Enshrouded is a third-person survival RPG with some Souls-like combat and deep crafting mechanics. You wake up in a ruined kingdom covered in toxic fog called the Shroud, and it's up to you to rebuild, explore, and fight your way through monsters, dungeons, and ancient tech. You scavenge, build bases, craft weapons, and fight enemies that can kill you in 2 hits. The game leans into classic survival loops. You have to cut trees, gather stone, cook food, but with real vertical exploration, responsive combat, and dark fantasy vibes. If Valheim, Elden Ring, and Breath of the Wild had a love child, it probably look something like this. But a year and a half later, it's still in early access and there's still some jank, especially when it comes to performance on the Steam Deck. Before I jump into that performance, I just quickly wanted to mention that if you're into this kind of Steam Deck coverage, please follow my Steam Flow curator page on Steam as well as my Steam group. I post all my reviews in a written format there, and you can check out the best settings for the games that I review. It will be awesome if you follow me there. Alright, let's talk performance, and yeah, Enshrouded is one of the toughest games I've tested recently on the Steam Deck. Out of the box, the game will default to medium settings and it will instantly tank under 15 FPS, which makes it completely unplayable. After some tweaking, and by that I mean setting it to the absolute lowest settings, I've landed on somewhat of a stable experience. So in order to get it to stay at 30, and that's not even all the time, you have to actually first lower the resolution of the game to about 65%. The game offers resolution scale, but what it actually does is it just lowers the internal resolution and set everything else to the absolute lowest. The game offers FSR, it's FSR2, and you have to set that to performance mode to even keep it at 30 FPS. And with all of these settings on the OLED, you're gonna get around 2.5 hours, maybe 3 hours of battery life, with temperatures ranging between 75 and 80 degrees. So the deck is really pushing hard to try and keep 30 FPS. Now, I did experiment with the DekiFrame Gen plugin, and that should pretty much take FSR2 to FSR3. There was a little bit of improvement, but not by much. The thing is, most of the time, if you're in your own base, if it's not that big, or if you're just farming for items without engaging in combat, you're going to be hitting 30 FPS and it's going to be pretty stable. The game is somewhat blurry, but it's still pretty playable. However, as soon as you get into some heavy combat, it will drop into the low 20s or even the teens, and it's just not a great experience whatsoever. Now, with these settings, the game, as I said, gets a bit soft, very soft and blurry. However, text and UI stay readable thanks to FSR2, but the environments are noticeably blurry. It is playable, but definitely not pretty. Some good news is that the game does have full controller support, including menu navigation, radio wheels. Now, the radio wheels actually help a lot when selecting items. Inventory and crafting are easily accessible with the controllers. I didn't find any issues there. The UI scales well to 16:10 ratio, so nothing gets cut off. There's camera shake, loot visuals, and accessibility tweaks are there too, but no font size scaling, which might be an issue for some players. But as I said, even if the game becomes blurry, the text and the menus are actually still readable. Combat feels surprisingly good at controller, but if you're only fighting a couple of enemies, as soon as you start fighting 3 or 4 more enemies on the screen, you are going to drop in FPS and it's not going to be pretty. So my final verdict, Enshrouded is a gorgeous, brutal survivor game with loads of promise. I did have fun playing it on my main PC, but it is barely playable on Steam Deck right now. With aggressive settings and 30 FPS cap, you can build, explore, and farm resources pretty comfortably. So if you're only doing this on the side, let's say you have a main PC where you usually play the game, and you're out and about and you have your Steam Deck and you wanted to do just a light bit farming or building, yeah, absolutely, you can do that on the Steam Deck. It's pretty durable and you're gonna have a great time. But if you want to experience the full game, Steam Deck is not the machine to do that for you. Still, the game is still in early access, so they may be doing some more optimizations to try and get this to run at 30 FPS locked. But so far, a year and a half later, there hasn't really been much change in how the game runs. and unfortunately I cannot recommend playing it solely on the Steam Deck. That's gonna be it for this video. If you found it helpful, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more Steam Deck content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.